agenda for this presentation will be 4 points. We'll discuss a boarding officer in general first with the legal framework. After, I will share a little bit of how Cote d'Ivoire is trying to do their boarding, and to end with how technology can help in conducting those operations. As we all know, the insecurity at sea remains a global challenge for every country, going from IU fishing, illegal trafficking, and also piracy and armed robbery. And if we want to make the parallel with the land forces, we always need sometime people on the ground to counter the threat. And this is how the Navy also is going at sea to conduct operation to safeguard the interests of every countries. And one way that the Navy is doing this specific task is to do boarding operation on other vessels or suspect vessels. So boarding operation basically are used for mainly three purposes. We can go on board vessels to gather intelligence. We can also go at sea to interdict some vessels to enter a specific zone or to smuggle specific items in a country or in an area. But also we can do also boarding operation for the purpose of law enforcement. And this is how basically the definition, what we have to take from those definition is like boarding of operation are meant to make sure that vessels at sea are compliant mostly with international law, but in some time also with national law where the boarding take place. And yeah, it can go from the control from the document on board the ship, but also in certain cases to make sure the ship will comply with the relevant regulations. And boarding are part of what we call maritime interdiction operations, and there are quite six of them that I will mention. As you may see, can go for embargo operations to fishery patrols or maybe refugee recovery. And when we were doing boarding operation, we realized that there is some challenges. The first challenge will be maybe a legal challenge. It will be the interpretation of the international law, namely what comprehension do we have with what we call the law of maritime interdictions. So how we all know the principle that govern the seas, freedom of navigation, the flag state exclusive jurisdictions. So boarding operation is kind of balance between those interests that the states have at sea. And an example or two examples of that, in UNCLOS we have the right of visit, but also for the use of forces, if we all remember the Saiga principle that stem from the ITLOS ruling between two countries, those show how it can be tricky to do sometime boarding at sea because one action can maybe involve all the responsibility of one state. And the second challenge is like risk is a permanent factor in boarding operation. You cannot do boarding without taking some level of risk. And those risks can be safety, but also security threat. An example, a ship can, or small craft can capsize during boarding operation, but at the same time, if you are, for example, following criminals, they can maybe have some harmful intention against the boarding team. So this is one parameter that is taking that is taken very seriously. And during, I will come to it later in my presentation with the Cote d'Ivoire approach, but I want first to go on the legal framework that govern boarding at sea. Mostly it's come from the right of visit defined under UNCLOS, but you will see that depending on the type of infraction or depending on the type of operations, the international laws or the international regulations will provide some sort of condition where a state can conduct a boarding on a foreign vessel or maybe on a national vessel. So we have different international conventions that are presented here, each with a condition that allow Navy or Coast Guard to conduct boarding at sea. At the national level for Cote d'Ivoire, mostly the mandate for boarding in Cote d'Ivoire started maybe when we got our independence, but it has been refined with our national state action of sea strategy in 2014 that defined what we call the Coast Guard functions. And during in this function, the Navy will be involved around the maritime law enforcement activities. And we also inducted some other laws after this strategy, the fishery aquaculture law in 2016, the maritime code in 2017, and also the law that governing or organizing the armed forces in 2016 that gave some time of mandate to the Navy to conduct boarding in support of national law, but also in support of international law. If I want to take an example with the fishery and aquaculture law, it gave the mandate to Navy officer or Navy commanding officer to conduct a visit or search on a vessel that Cote d'Ivoire has jurisdiction without specific mandate. Namely, it's like me when I'm going at sea, if I see a ship which fly the flag of Cote d'Ivoire, for example, I don't need a specific authorization to go and board the vessel to make sure that the vessel will comply with the law. And when we work also with our fisheries authorities, they can also conduct joint operation where we go at sea and to control and visit vessels that are fishing in our area, maybe based on bilateral agreement or in the event of international cooperation. And to conduct the boarding at sea, Cote d'Ivoire has a specific approach. We use mostly our infrastructures on land, and we have also what we call our operational assets, which are composed mainly by our warships, small craft, and the Air Force aircraft also that help us monitor our area. So all these components are maybe coordinated through the Maritime Operations Center in Abidjan. We have one in Abidjan and one in San Pedro. And this center will control the assets that are deployed at sea to conduct the boardings. But beside that, before we are able to go at sea, we need information, we need intelligence. So we use our coastal stations that we have along the coastline of Cote d'Ivoire. And these coastal stations also will interact with the local communities sometime to get intelligence or to get information about the fishing activities. One example is like one day, one fisherman contacted the Navy saying that from my position at the coastline, I see a vessel that is very, very close to the shore. So it means that the vessel is fishing outside his permitted zone. So the guy informed the Navy, and Navy was able to send a patrol vessel to go and interdict that vessel. And that's an example. And in this is a video that's just a 2-minute videos. Okay. So basically, in this video, it was a real-time operation that have taken place this year in our waters, where a fishing vessel was declared fishing in a forbidden zone. So we sent a patrol vessels with a team with the fishery control officers at sea to interdict the vessel, and we brought back the vessel to port for further investigation and for the administrative process. So this was a very successful operation done with many different agencies, including the Navy, and to detect the vessel fishing, for example, in the forbidden zone, we use our drones, and the drones were operated by the people that are based in our coastal station. So it was a very successful example on the infrastructure or maybe the system put in place by the Navy to make sure that fishing activities will abide to the law. So, and during my staff or my time at the World Maritime University, I conducted a study on vessel boarding and search and seizure, and I used the risk analysis approach in order to enhance the performance of the team that are doing the boarding. I developed my own, I would say, research framework to maybe come up with some recommendations. And the first recommendation that, or the first constatation that we had is like, when it comes to boarding, we know that the assets that are very close to the suspected vessel are the most vulnerable to safety or security risk. But also, even if the level of incident is very low, the consequences can be very serious, like death or the total loss of one equipment. But when we go to fishing vessels, we notice that the boarding arrangement on fishing vessel remain or needs further enhancements, and the teams that are mostly involved in the boarding operation, they use their own experience or their own judgment in order to manage the risk. That's how we came out with some recommendations to enhance those operations that are based on 4 pillars: the equipment that are put it in force, the procedures, also the organization culture inside the Navy, and also the training. And the last part of my presentation is like, we noticed also that since we were talking about technology this morning with Dr. Ife, we noticed that drones also can be a multiplier, or for boarding operation, using drone can help enhance the effective, the reliance of the information that we got for boarding, but also it can help us enhance our operation conducting boarding at sea. And to that, I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm open for questions.